In a small village tucked away in the rolling hills of the Cotswolds, there was a modest tea shop called Bramley's Brew. It had stood for decades, with its mismatched china cups and faded floral wallpaper. For most, it was a charming relic of the past, but for Alice Cooper, it was a sanctuary from the hustle and bustle of London life. Alice had moved to the village a few months earlier, seeking a quieter existence after the stress of her high-powered job in the city. She had left behind the relentless meetings, the constant rush, and the never-ending grind. In Bramley's Brew, everything seemed slower, more deliberate. The tea was served hot, the scones freshly baked, and the conversations were gentle, nothing like the frantic energy of the metropolis she had left behind. On her first visit to the shop, Alice had ordered a simple English breakfast tea, served in a delicate porcelain teapot. The moment she took her first sip, she could feel a wave of calm washing over her. It wasn't just the tea, it was the atmosphere. The quiet, the warmth, the subtle hum of conversations from nearby tables. It all felt like an embrace. Over time, Alice began to frequent Bramley's Brew more often. She was fascinated by the tea shop's history. Mrs. Evelyn Bramley, the owner, had inherited the shop from her grandmother, and her family had been serving tea to the villagers for generations. There was something about the tradition that Alice found comforting. One afternoon, as the village prepared for the annual summer fete, Mrs. Bramley leaned across the counter and whispered, "You know, my dear, it's the tea that makes the difference around here. You can't rush it. You have to steep it just right." Alice chuckled. "I suppose you've got it down to an art, haven't you?" Mrs. Bramley smiled warmly. "Oh, it's not just the brewing. It's the way people gather round, share their stories, and enjoy each other's company. Tea has a way of making people feel connected, even if they're strangers." Alice thought about that. Back in London, everyone was always in such a hurry, too busy to pause for anything as simple as a cup of tea. It seemed as if people were constantly racing to be somewhere else. Here, in this little village, people took the time to savor the present moment. As the fete began, Alice found herself at a table with a group of villagers she'd only just met. They laughed, shared stories, and sipped tea together under a canopy of bunting and sun-dappled trees. It wasn't grand, but it was real. In the midst of all the hecticness of modern life, Alice realized she had found something far more valuable, a sense of belonging. In that moment, Alice understood what Mrs. Bramley had meant. The tea wasn't just about the taste. It was about connection, tradition, and a slower pace that allowed for true community. It wasn't just a beverage. It was a bridge that brought people together, one cup at a time. And so, in the heart of the Cotswolds, amidst the steam rising from her cup, Alice found her place.